The night my wife publicly offered to trade me like a broken appliance, I should have walked away. Instead, I smiled, raised my beer, and said, "Hell, Olivia, let's make it official." The backyard barbecue fell silent except for the sizzling burgers on Linda's grill. 23 neighbors stared at us like we'd just announced we were starting a cult. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name's Tate, and I've been fixing other people's problems for 42 years. Plumbing, electrical, marriage counseling, you name it, I've jury-rigged a solution. But standing there in Linda Morrison's backyard, watching my wife's face cycle through surprise, embarrassment, and something that looked suspiciously like relief, I realized some things can't be fixed. They can only be dismantled with surgical precision. "Oh, Eddie's just being dramatic," Olivia laughed, but her voice cracked like old paint. She clutched her wine glass tighter, the one with the stupid inspirational quote about living your best life. "You know how sensitive he gets." Linda, bless her practical heart, stepped up from behind the grill with a spatula in one hand and a wicked grin on her face. "Actually, Olivia, I've been thinking Ed's pretty undervalued around here. I'd take that trade in a heartbeat." The crowd murmured appreciatively. Linda was 45, divorced, and ran her own accounting firm. She had the kind of confidence that came from never having to ask anyone's permission to exist. Derek Foster, my former business partner and current pain in my ass, chose that moment to insert himself into the conversation like a splinter under a fingernail. "Come on, Ed. We all know Olivia's got expensive taste. You'd need to sweeten the deal." Derek stood 6'2" in his designer polo shirt, all teeth and aftershave, the kind of guy who called everyone buddy and meant it as an insult. We'd started our construction company together 15 years ago, before he decided he was too good for actual work and bought me out for half what my share was worth. "You're right, Derek," I said, taking a long pull from my beer. "Olivia does have expensive taste. Question is, can she afford it on a teacher's salary?" The temperature in the backyard dropped 10 degrees. Olivia taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school, a fact she'd been increasingly embarrassed about since Derek started throwing around words like equity and portfolio diversification at every social gathering. I didn't mean," Olivia stammered, but Derek was already moving in for the final blow. "Hey now, buddy, no need to get nasty. We're all friends here." Derek's smile was sharper than a box cutter. "Besides, some of us have moved beyond the hourly wage lifestyle." I set my beer down on Linda's patio table with deliberate care. 23 pairs of eyes tracked the movement like I was defusing a bomb. In a way, I was. "You know what, Derek? You're absolutely right. Some of us have moved beyond a lot of things, like loyalty, like friendship, like basic human decency." The silence stretched taut as a guitar string. Linda flipped a burger with unnecessary force, sending grease hissing into the flames. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower hummed its suburban lullaby. Olivia's friend Cassie, a bottle-blonde real estate agent with the survival instincts of a shark, decided to throw gasoline on the fire. "Honestly, Ed, Olivia was just joking. You don't have to make it weird." "Weird?" I laughed, and it sounded foreign even to my own ears. "Cassie, my wife just announced she'd trade me for a better model in front of half the neighborhood. If that's not weird, I don't know what is." Amanda, Olivia's other friend, nodded along like a bobblehead doll. She sold overpriced essential oils and had opinions about everything. "Maybe if you tried harder to appreciate what you have." "What I have," I interrupted, "is a wife who thinks I'm a fixer-upper project, and friends who think I should be grateful for the opportunity to be publicly humiliated." The backyard had gone so quiet, I could hear Mrs. Cranston's wind chimes 3 houses down. She was probably taking notes from her kitchen window, updating her mental database of neighborhood drama. By tomorrow morning, This conversation would be dissected and analyzed from here to the coffee shop on Main Street. Linda cleared her throat. "Burgers are ready. Who wants cheese?" But nobody moved. We were past the point of pretending this was just another neighborhood barbecue. The facade had cracked, and everyone could see the rot underneath. "I think," I said carefully, "I'll pass on dinner. Thanks for the hospitality, Linda. And the offer." I winked at her, and she grinned back like we were sharing a private joke. Olivia's face went white. "Ed, don't be ridiculous. We're not leaving." "We?" I raised an eyebrow. "Sweetheart, you just put me on the trading block. Far as I'm concerned, you can negotiate the terms with your new management team." I walked toward the gate, feeling 23 pairs of eyes boring into my back. Behind me, Olivia's voice rose in pitch and volume. "Edward Tate, you get back here right now. This is embarrassing." I stopped at the gate and turned around. Olivia stood in the middle of Linda's patio like a general who'd just lost her army. Derek looked uncomfortable for the first time all evening, probably calculating how this drama might affect his carefully cultivated image. "Embarrassing?" I repeated. "Honey, we haven't even started yet." I walked home alone, leaving my wife to explain to 23 neighbors why her husband had just called her bluff in spectacular fashion. The night air felt cool against my skin, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like someone was standing on my chest. Our house sat at the end of Maple Street like a monument to middle-class aspirations. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a 2-car garage, and a mortgage that would outlive us both. I'd renovated most of it myself over the years, turning a basic colonial into something that could have graced the cover of Better Homes and Gardens. Olivia used to brag about my handiwork to her friends. Used to. I sat on the front porch steps and waited. Olivia would come home eventually, probably with a speech prepared about how I'd overreacted and embarrassed her in front of the whole neighborhood. She'd use words like childish and inappropriate, and she'd expect me to apologize and pretend tonight had never happened. But I was done pretending, done fixing things that were broken by design, done being the reliable, predictable husband who absorbed insults like a sponge and asked for more. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. "Offer still stands. You looked good walking away." I was still smiling when Olivia's car pulled into the driveway 20 minutes later. She sat behind the wheel for a long moment, probably rehearsing her opening lines. When she finally got out, her face was set in the expression I'd learned to recognize over 18 years of marriage, righteous indignation mixed with wounded pride. "I hope you're happy," she said, slamming the car door hard enough to wake the neighbors. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" "For who?" I asked mildly. She stomped up the walkway, her heels clicking against the concrete like castanets. "For me, Ed. For us. Everyone was staring." "They were staring before I said anything, Olivia. They were staring when you announced you wanted to trade up for a better husband. They were staring when Derek decided to pile on. I just gave them something worth looking at." She stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, close enough that I could smell her perfume mixed with wine and barely controlled panic. "It was a joke, Ed. A stupid joke. You know I didn't mean anything by it." "Did I know that?" I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 42 years in my knees and back. "Because from where I was standing, it sounded like you meant every word. You're being paranoid." "Am I? When's the last time you said something nice about me in public, Olivia? When's the last time you said something nice about me in private?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "That's what I thought," I said. "You want to know what's humiliating? Being married to someone who thinks you're a disappointment? Being the punchline to jokes you didn't know were being told? Being so taken for granted that your own wife thinks she can shop around for an upgrade at a neighborhood barbecue?" Olivia's eyes filled with tears, but I'd seen this performance before. The waterworks usually came right before the gas lighting. I never said I wanted an upgrade, she whispered. You didn't have to. It's been written all over your face for months. Every time Derek talks about his latest investment, every time Cassie mentions her husband's promotion, every time you look at me and see everything you think you settled for. That's not fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sweetheart, fair went out the window when you decided our marriage was material for public comedy. I walked past her toward the front door, but she grabbed my arm. Where are you going? Inside. It's my house too, remember? At least until you find someone willing to take it off your hands. I left her standing on the walkway and went inside to pack a bag. Not because I was leaving, this was my house, built with my sweat and paid for with my labor, but because I wanted her to think I was. I wanted her to spend the night wondering what came next, wondering if she'd finally pushed too hard. From the bedroom window, I watched her pace back and forth on the front lawn, her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling Cassie or Amanda, looking for someone to tell her she was the victim in this scenario, someone to validate her wounded feelings and assure her that I was the one being unreasonable. But I wasn't feeling reasonable. For the first time in years, I was feeling something else entirely, something that tasted like possibility and felt like freedom. I zipped up the overnight bag and set it by the front door where she couldn't miss it. Then I went to the kitchen and opened another beer. Through the window, I could see Olivia still pacing, still talking, still trying to control a narrative that had already slipped through her fingers. Tomorrow, the whole neighborhood would be talking about the Tates and their public meltdown. Mrs. Cranston would hold court at the coffee shop, dissecting every word and gesture with the precision of a forensic pathologist. Linda would probably field a dozen phone calls from women wanting to know if she was serious about that trade offer. And Derek? Derek would be calculating how to distance himself from the drama while maintaining his position as the neighborhood's unofficial success story. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the disappointing husband or the reliable handyman or the guy who smiled and took it when his wife decided to use him for target practice. Just Ed Tate, 42 years old, with calloused hands and a toolbox full of solutions to other people's problems. Starting tomorrow, I was going to start solving my own. Chapter 2. I woke up alone, which wasn't unusual. Olivia had been sleeping in the guest room for the past 3 weeks, claiming my snoring kept her awake. What was unusual was the silence. No coffee maker gurgling to life, no shower running, no morning routine that had defined our marriage for 18 years. The overnight bag sat exactly where I'd left it by the front door, untouched, but impossible to ignore. Olivia's car was gone from the driveway. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Derek and a text message that made my coffee taste like battery acid. We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's at 7. Murphy's Tavern was the kind of place where construction workers went to complain about their jobs and middle-aged men went to complain about their wives. It served cheap beer and cheaper food, and it minded its own business. Derek suggesting we meet there was like a vegetarian proposing dinner at a steakhouse, completely out of character. I spent the day working on a bathroom renovation for the Hendersons, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of measuring, cutting, and fitting pieces together. Physical labor had always been my therapy, the one place where problems had solutions and effort produced visible results. Mrs. Henderson brought me iced tea around 3 o'clock and lingered in the doorway like she wanted to say something. Everything all right, Ed? You seem a little distracted today. Word traveled fast in our neighborhood. I'd bet money that Mrs. Henderson had already heard 3 different versions of last night's barbecue incident, each one more dramatic than the last. Just working through some things, Mrs. Henderson? Nothing that can't be fixed. She nodded sympathetically. Well, you let me know if you need anything. Harold and I think the world of you. It was a small kindness, but it hit harder than I expected. When was the last time Olivia had said she thought the world of me? When was the last time she'd said anything that wasn't a criticism disguised as helpful advice? I finished the tile work by 6 and cleaned up my tools with mechanical precision. Every screwdriver had its place, every drill bit sorted by size. Organization was the foundation of good craftsmanship, something I'd learned from my father and tried to pass on to the apprentices who worked for me over the years. Murphy's Tavern sat on the corner of Main and 3rd, a squat brick building that looked like it had been there since the town was founded. The neon Budweiser sign in the window flickered intermittently, and the parking lot was full of pickup trucks and motorcycles. Derek's BMW looked as out of place as a tuxedo at a construction site. I found him at a corner booth, nursing a beer and checking his phone every 30 seconds. He'd traded his usual polo shirt for a button-down and khakis, his idea of dressing down for the working class. "Thanks for coming," he said as I slid into the opposite seat. "Wouldn't miss it. You buying?" He signaled the waitress, a tired-looking woman in her 50s who'd probably been working at Murphy's since before Derek knew what a stock portfolio was. "2 Budweisers," Derek told her, then turned back to me. "Look, Ed, about last night." "What about it?" "You know what about it. The whole thing got out of hand." I leaned back in the booth and studied his face. Derek had always been easy to read once you knew what to look for. The slight twitch in his left eye when he was nervous. The way he touched his watch when he was lying. The forced smile that never quite reached his eyes. Out of hand how? I thought it was pretty straightforward. My wife offered to trade me. Linda made a counteroffer. You decided to share your opinion about my financial status. Just good neighbors having an honest conversation. The beers arrived, and Derek waited until the waitress was out of earshot before continuing. "Come on, man. Olivia was just blowing off steam. You know how women get when they've had a few drinks?" "Do I? How do women get, Derek?" He shifted uncomfortably. "You know what I mean. They say things they don't mean. Make jokes that come out wrong." "Funny thing about jokes," I said, taking a sip of beer. "The best ones have a grain of truth in them." Derek's eye twitched. "Look, I'm trying to help here. Olivia's upset. She thinks you're having some kind of midlife crisis." "Is that what she thinks?" "She's worried about you, Ed. We all are." "We?" I raised an eyebrow. "Who's we?" "Your friends. The people who care about you." I laughed, and Derek flinched like I'd slapped him. "My friends. Right. The same friends who thought it was hilarious when my wife decided to put me on the market. The same friends who piled on when I was down. Those friends? Nobody was piling on." "Bullshit." The word came out harder than I intended, loud enough to turn heads at the bar. I lowered my voice but kept the edge. "You stood there and watched her humiliate me, then decided to add your own commentary about hourly wages and lifestyle choices. That's not friendship, Derek. That's something else entirely." Derek's face flushed red. "I was just joking around." "Jesus, Ed. When did you become so sensitive?" "About the same time you became such an asshole." The silence stretched between us like a loaded spring. Around us, Murphy's continued its nightly routine. Construction workers complaining about their foreman, retirees arguing about baseball, the eternal rhythm of working-class life. "I didn't come here to fight with you," Derek said finally. "Why did you come here?" He took a long pull from his beer, buying time. "Because we used to be friends, because I'm worried about you, because Olivia asked me to talk to you." "Olivia asked you to talk to me." I repeated the words slowly, tasting each one. "When did she ask you that, Derek?" "This morning. She called me, upset about last night. She thinks you're going through something, maybe depression or—" "She called you this morning." I leaned forward, studying his face. "My wife, who supposedly loves and cares about me, called my former business partner to discuss my mental health instead of talking to me directly." Derek's eye was twitching like a strobe light now. "She's scared, Ed. She doesn't know how to reach you anymore." "But she knows how to reach you." "It's not like that." "What's it like then?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. For a man who made his living selling people on investment opportunities, he was remarkably bad at selling me on this particular story. "We're friends," he said finally. "Olivia and I. We talk sometimes." "About what?" "Just stuff. Life. Work. You. Me." I nodded slowly. "You and my wife talk about me. How often?" "I don't know. Not often. When she's worried or—" "Derek." I said his name quietly, the way I'd speak to a spooked animal. "How long have you and Olivia been talking?" His face went through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, calculation, resignation. I'd seen the same progression on his face 15 years ago when I'd caught him skimming money from our business account. "It's not what you think," he said. "I haven't told you what I think yet. We're friends, Ed, that's all. She needed someone to talk to, and you weren't exactly available." "Available for what?" "For her. For your marriage." "Christ, Ed, when's the last time you two went out together? When's the last time you showed any interest in what she wants or needs?" The accusation hit like a sucker punch, mostly because there was truth in it. Olivia and I had been living parallel lives for months, sharing a house and a mortgage, but little else. I'd assumed it was just a rough patch, the kind of thing that happened to long-term marriages. I'd assumed we'd work through it the way we'd worked through everything else. I'd assumed wrong. "So you stepped in to fill the gap," I said. "It's not like that." "What's it like?" Derek finished his beer and signaled for another. The gesture bought him 30 seconds to think, 30 seconds to craft whatever story he thought I'd buy. "She's lonely, Ed. She feels like you don't see her anymore, don't appreciate what you have. She needed a friend. A friend who thinks her husband is a disappointment. A friend who agrees that she deserves better. A friend who's willing to publicly humiliate that husband at a neighborhood barbecue." "I wasn't trying to humiliate you." "Then what were you trying to do?" Derek's second beer arrived, and he took a gulp that was more desperation than thirst. "I was trying to wake you up. Make you see what you're losing before it's too late. By insulting me in front of half the neighborhood. By showing you what other people see when they look at your marriage. Olivia's a beautiful, intelligent woman. She deserves someone who appreciates her." "Someone like you?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. Derek's face went white, then red, then white again. "It's not like that," he repeated, but his voice cracked on the last word. I finished my beer and stood up. "Thanks for the drink, Derek, and the conversation. It's been very enlightening." "Ed, wait." "No." I dropped a $10 bill on the table. "I think we've said enough for one night." I walked out of Murphy's Tavern feeling like I'd just solved a puzzle I didn't know I was working on. The pieces had been there all along: Olivia's increasing dissatisfaction, Derek's casual cruelty, the way they'd tag-teamed me at the barbecue like they'd rehearsed it. My phone buzzed as I unlocked my truck. A text from Olivia. "Derek says you two talked. We need to discuss this like adults." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. If Olivia wanted to discuss our marriage, she could do it with me directly, instead of using Derek as a go-between. I drove home through streets I'd known for 20 years, past houses I'd helped build or repair, through a neighborhood that had been my world for most of my adult life. But tonight, it felt different, smaller, like I was seeing it from the outside for the first time. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Olivia's car was still gone, probably parked in front of Cassie's house or Amanda's, wherever wronged wives went to have their feelings validated and their husbands vilified. I sat in the truck for a few minutes, looking at the house I'd spent 18 years turning into a home. Every window, every door, every piece of trim bore the mark of my labor. I'd built this life with my own hands, and now it was crumbling like a house of cards in a strong wind. But maybe that wasn't entirely bad. Maybe some things needed to fall apart before they could be rebuilt properly. I went inside and found a bottle of bourbon I'd been saving for a special occasion. Tonight felt special enough. I poured 3 fingers into a glass and sat at the kitchen table, looking out at the backyard where I'd hosted dozens of barbecues over the years. Tomorrow, I'd start asking questions I should have asked months ago. I'd start paying attention to things I'd been too busy or too trusting to notice. I'd start treating my marriage like a construction project. Identify the problems, assess the damage, decide what could be salvaged and what needed to be torn down and rebuilt. But tonight, I was going to sit in my kitchen and drink my bourbon and plan my next move. Because Derek was right about one thing. I had been asleep. But I was wide awake now. Chapter 3. I woke up with a bourbon headache and a text message from Linda Morrison. Coffee, I make it stronger than my marriage lasted. Olivia still wasn't home. Her side of the bed looked like it hadn't been slept in, which meant she'd spent the night at Cassie's or Amanda's, probably getting advice on how to handle her unreasonable husband. Linda's kitchen smelled like fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls, a combination that almost made me forget why I was there. She answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her graying hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger than her 45 years. "You look like hell," she said cheerfully, handing me a mug that could have doubled as a soup bowl. "Feel worse than I look." "Good. That means you're taking this seriously." She settled into the chair across from me, cradling her own mug. "So, how much trouble are you in?" Define trouble. The kind where your wife spends the night somewhere else and your former business partner feels the need to stage an intervention at Murphy's Tavern. I nearly choked on my coffee. "How did you—" "Small town, Ed. Murphy's has ears, and those ears are connected to mouths that love to talk. By this morning, half the neighborhood knows Derek Foster bought you a beer and a lecture about appreciating what you have." Linda's kitchen window faced the street, giving her a perfect view of the comings and goings on Maple Street. I'd never paid attention to how much she might have observed over the years, but I was starting to realize she saw everything. "What else does the neighborhood know?" "That Olivia's car wasn't in your driveway last night, that she's been spending a lot of time at Cassie's lately, that Derek's been very concerned about your marriage for someone who bought you out of your own business." She said the last part with the kind of casual precision that made my stomach clench. "You noticed that too?" "Honey, I'm a divorced accountant who works from home. I notice everything." Linda took a sip of coffee and studied my face. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "About what, specifically?" "About the fact that your wife and your former business partner have been having an affair for at least 3 months. The words hit like a physical blow, even though I'd been circling around the same conclusion since last night. Hearing it spoken out loud by someone else made it real in a way that my own suspicions hadn't. "You know that for sure?" "I know Derek's BMW has been parked in the lot behind the elementary school every Tuesday and Thursday at 3:30 for the past 3 months. I know Olivia's been staying late for curriculum planning on those same days. I know they've been meeting at the Starbucks on Route 9 every Saturday morning while you're working." Linda reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry, Ed. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear." "How long have you known?" "I suspected for a while, but I wasn't sure until last night. The way they looked at each other during that whole trading joke thing, that wasn't the first time they'd discussed your marriage." I stared into my coffee mug, watching the steam rise like smoke signals. 18 years of marriage, reduced to a series of parking lot observations and coffee shop meetings. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" "Because it wasn't my place, and because I hoped I was wrong." Linda's voice was gentle but firm. "But after last night, after the way they both came at you like a coordinated attack, I couldn't stay quiet anymore." "A coordinated attack?" Think about it, Ed. Olivia makes the joke about trading up. Derek immediately piles on with the comment about your finances. Then they both act like you're the one being unreasonable when you push back. That wasn't spontaneous. That was planned. The cinnamon roll I'd been eating turned to sawdust in my mouth. They were trying to provoke me, They were trying to make you look bad in front of the whole neighborhood. Make you the villain in their story. What story? Linda refilled both our mugs, taking her time with the answer. The story where Olivia is the neglected wife married to an angry, unstable husband who embarrasses her in public. The story where Derek is the concerned friend trying to help save a troubled marriage. The story where whatever happens next is your fault for being unreasonable. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The months of increasing criticism from Olivia, the way she'd started questioning my judgment on everything from finances to home repairs, Derek's sudden interest in our marriage, his helpful suggestions about communication and compromise, the way they'd both seemed surprised but not shocked when I'd pushed back last night. They wanted me to lose my temper. They wanted you to be the bad guy, but you didn't give them what they wanted. You walked away like a gentleman, and now they don't know what to do with that. My phone buzzed with another text from Olivia. We need to talk. This has gone on long enough. I showed Linda the message. She snorted with laughter. This has gone on long enough. Like you're the one who's been dragging things out. Linda shook her head. She's got some nerve. I'll give her that. So what do I do now? That depends. What do you want? It was a simple question with a complicated answer. What did I want? To go back to the way things were before I knew about the affair? To pretend the last 24 hours had never happened? To fix my marriage the way I fixed broken pipes and faulty wiring? I want the truth, I said finally. All of it. Linda smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Then you're going to need help. And lucky for you, I know where all the bodies are buried in this neighborhood. What do you mean? I mean, Olivia and Derek aren't the only ones with secrets. And sometimes the best way to get the truth is to remind people how much they have to lose by lying. She stood up and walked to a filing cabinet in the corner of her kitchen, returning with a manila folder thick with papers. What's that? Insurance records, tax documents, building permits, business filings, 20 years of neighborhood paperwork that passes through my office. Linda opened the folder and spread the contents across the table. Derek's been very creative with his tax returns lately, and Cassie's been even more creative with her real estate commissions. I stared at the papers, recognizing official letterheads and legal documents. Linda, I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. Because I like you, Ed, and I hate bullies, and what they did to you last night was bullying, pure and simple. This could get you in trouble. Only if someone reports me, and the only people who would report me are the same people who have the most to lose if this information becomes public. Linda's smile was sharp as a blade. Funny how that works. I spent the next hour learning more about my neighbors than I'd discovered in 20 years of living next to them. Derek's construction business was leveraged to the hilt, surviving on a combination of creative accounting and outright fraud. Cassie had been skimming money from her real estate transactions for years. Amanda's essential oil business was actually a pyramid scheme that had attracted the attention of the state attorney general's office. The whole neighborhood is built on lies, Linda said, as she organized the papers back into the folder. Everyone's pretending to be more successful than they are, more honest than they are, more happy than they are. Including me? Including all of us. But the difference is, you're not hurting anyone with your lies. You're just trying to hold your marriage together and keep your head above water. They're actively screwing people over and then looking down on you for not being as successful as they are. My phone rang. Olivia's name appeared on the screen, and Linda nodded toward it. Answer it. But remember, you hold all the cards now. Don't let her convince you otherwise. I swiped to accept the call. Hello, Olivia. Ed, thank God. We need to talk. Can you meet me at home in an hour? Are you asking or telling? I'm asking. Please. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. What whole thing? A pause. You know what thing. The fight at Linda's barbecue, the way you stormed out, whatever you said to Derek last night that has him all worked up. Derek's worked up. He's worried about you, Ed. We all are. You're not acting like yourself. I looked across the table at Linda, who was making exaggerated jerking-off motions with her hand. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. Maybe I'm acting exactly like myself for the first time in years. That's what I'm worried about. Olivia's voice took on the tone she used with difficult third graders. Look, I know you're upset about the joke I made, and I'm sorry if it hurt your feelings. But this silent treatment isn't solving anything. Silent treatment? You know what I mean. Not coming home, not returning my calls, making me worry about where you are and what you're thinking. I came home, Olivia. You're the one who didn't. Another pause. I needed some space to think. About what? About us, about our marriage, about what we both want going forward. Linda was shaking her head vigorously, drawing a finger across her throat in a cutting motion. And what do you want going forward? I asked. I want us to be happy. I want us to communicate better. I want us to work on our problems instead of letting them fester. Our problems? Yes, Ed, our problems. Marriage is a two-way street. You're right about that. I stood up and walked to Linda's window, looking out at the street where I'd lived for 2 decades. 1 hour at the house. We'll talk. Thank you. And Ed, I love you. Whatever else is happening, I need you to know that. She hung up before I could respond, which was probably for the best. I wasn't sure what I would have said. Linda was watching me with the expression of a chess player who'd just seen her opponent make a fatal mistake. She's scared, Linda said. Good. She should be, because in about 55 minutes you're going to walk into that house and blow up her entire world. I looked down at the manila folder full of secrets and lies, then back at Linda's determined face. Yeah, I said. I think I am. Namun. Chapter 4. The house felt different when I walked through the front door. Same furniture, same family photos on the mantel, same smell of vanilla candles that Olivia bought by the case from some catalog. But the atmosphere had changed, like the air pressure before a storm. Olivia was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and a yellow legal pad covered in her neat handwriting. She'd changed into the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one that brought out her eyes. Her hair was freshly styled, and she was wearing the perfume I'd given her for Christmas. She was dressed for battle, but trying to look like she was dressed for reconciliation. Hi, she said, looking up from her notes with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Hi yourself? I sat down across from her, noting the way she'd positioned herself with her back to the window, putting me in the harsh afternoon light. Even the seating arrangement was strategic. I made a list, she said, tapping the legal pad with her pen. Things we need to discuss, issues we need to work through. Let me guess. My anger issues, my communication problems, my failure to appreciate what I have. Her smile flickered. This isn't about blame, Ed. It's about moving forward. Moving forward from what? From this rough patch we've been going through. From the misunderstandings and hurt feelings. I leaned back in my chair and studied her face. Olivia had always been beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads at the grocery store and made other men wonder how a guy like me had gotten so lucky. But looking at her now, I saw something I'd missed before. The calculating look in her eyes, the way she was watching my reactions like a scientist studying a lab rat. What misunderstandings? I asked. The joke at Linda's barbecue, for one thing. I never meant to hurt your feelings, Ed. It was just silly party talk, and it got blown way out of proportion. By me. By everyone. The whole situation just spiraled out of control. Because I didn't laugh along with the joke about trading me for a better model. Olivia's pen tapped against the legal pad in a nervous rhythm. Because you took it personally when it wasn't meant that way. How was it meant? As a joke, Ed. As harmless teasing between friends. Friends like Derek? The pen stopped tapping. Derek was just being Derek. You know how he is, always trying to be the center of attention. Is that what he was doing? Trying to get attention? Of course. What else would it be? I pulled out my phone and set it on the table between us. That's what I'm trying to figure out. See, I had an interesting conversation with Derek last night, and an even more interesting conversation with Linda this morning. Olivia's face went pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. What kind of conversations? The kind where people tell me things I should have figured out months ago. Ed, I don't know what Linda told you, but she's been going through a difficult time since her divorce. She's not exactly a reliable source. She told me about the BMW parked behind the elementary school every Tuesday and Thursday at 3:30. She told me about the Saturday morning coffee meetings at Starbucks on Route 9. She told me about a lot of things, actually. Olivia's hand was trembling as she reached for her teacup. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You and Derek have been having an affair. The words hung in the air like a live wire. Olivia's face cycled through surprise, denial, anger, and something that looked like relief. That's ridiculous, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Because it explains a lot. The way you've been treating me like a disappointment. The way Derek's been so concerned about our marriage. The way you two tag-teamed me at the barbecue like you'd rehearsed it. We didn't rehearse anything, didn't you? I leaned forward, watching her face. The whole thing felt pretty coordinated to me. You make the joke about trading up. Derek piles on with the financial insults. Then you both act shocked when I don't play along with the script. Olivia's legal pad was forgotten now, her neat handwriting rendered irrelevant by the conversation we were actually having instead of the one she'd planned. You're being paranoid, Ed. Just because Derek and I are friends. Friends! I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. Is that what you call it when you're involved with my former business partner behind my back? She flinched like I'd slapped her. Don't be crude. Crude. Olivia, you've been cheating on me for months, then had the balls to publicly humiliate me in front of the entire neighborhood, and you're worried about me being crude? I haven't been cheating. Stop. The word came out harder than I intended, loud enough to make her jump. Just stop lying. I know about the affair. I know about the meetings. I know about the whole damn thing. Olivia stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating her options. Deny everything and hope I was bluffing? Admit to a lesser version of the truth and try to minimize the damage? Break down crying and beg for forgiveness? She chose option 4, counterattack. Fine, she said, her voice suddenly cold. Yes, Derek and I have been spending time together. Yes, we've grown close. And do you know why? I'm sure you're going to tell me. Because you checked out of this marriage months ago. Because you come home from work, eat dinner in front of the TV, and go to bed without saying 10 words to me. Because you treat me like a roommate instead of a wife. So you decided to find someone who would treat you better. I decided to find someone who actually sees me as a person, instead of just another thing to be maintained. The accusation hit home because there was truth in it. I had been going through the motions for months, treating our marriage like a machine that would keep running as long as I didn't look too closely at the warning signs. So this is my fault. This is both our faults. Our marriage has been dying for months, Ed. Derek didn't cause that. He just helped me realize it. By being with you in parking lots and coffee shops. Olivia's face flushed red. It's not just about sex. Derek understands me. He listens to me. He makes me feel like I matter. And I don't. When's the last time you asked me about my day? When's the last time you showed any interest in my thoughts or feelings or dreams? When's the last time you looked at me like you were glad to see me instead of just relieved that I was handling dinner so you didn't have to think about it? Each question was a small knife, precise and sharp. And the worst part was, I didn't have good answers for any of them. So you decided to have an affair, instead of talking to me about it. I tried to talk to you. For months I tried. But you were always too busy or too tired or too distracted to have a real conversation. And Derek was available. Derek was interested. Derek cared about what I had to say. Derek saw an opportunity and took it. Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. Don't reduce this to some kind of predatory thing. Derek is a good man who's been a friend to both of us. A friend who's been trying to get into your pants since the day we met him. That's not true. Isn't it? Come on, Olivia. You're a smart woman. You had to know what Derek was after from the beginning. He was after a real connection with someone who appreciated him, just like I was. And if that connection happened to destroy my marriage and my friendship, well, that was just collateral damage. Olivia stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the kitchen floor. This isn't getting us anywhere. Where exactly did you think it was going to get us? I thought we could have an adult conversation about our problems and figure out a way to move forward. Move forward how? With Derek as the third wheel in our marriage? Move forward as two people who used to love each other and might be able to find their way back to that. Used to love each other. I repeated the phrase slowly. Past tense. Olivia's anger crumbled, replaced by something that looked like genuine sadness. I don't know, Ed. I honestly don't know if we can get back what we've lost. What have we lost? The friendship, the partnership, the feeling that we were on the same team instead of just sharing a mortgage. She wasn't wrong. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being partners and started being roommates. We'd stopped talking and started coexisting. We'd stopped fighting for our marriage and started just surviving it. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. And it sure as hell didn't excuse the way she'd done it. So what now? I asked. Now we figure out if there's anything left worth saving. And Derek? What happens to your friend Derek while we're figuring that out? Olivia looked out the kitchen window, avoiding my eyes. Derek is complicated. Complicated how? He's been going through his own problems. His business is struggling. His divorce was messy. He's been lonely. His divorce was 3 years ago, Olivia. And his business problems aren't your responsibility. I know that. But when someone you care about is hurting, someone you care about. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the backyard where we'd hosted dozens of barbecues over the years. Do you love him? The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. Olivia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I care about him, she said finally. That's not what I asked. It's complicated, Ed. My feelings for Derek, your feelings for me, the whole situation, it's all complicated. It's not complicated at all. You either love him or you don't. And if I do? What then? I turned back to face her, and for the first time in months I saw her clearly. Not the woman I'd married 18 years ago, not the woman I'd been trying to hold on to, but the woman she'd become. Someone who could justify an affair as emotional fulfillment. Someone who could publicly humiliate her husband and call it a joke. Someone who could sit in our kitchen and talk about her lover like he was the victim in this scenario. Then I guess we don't have anything left to figure out, I said. Olivia's eyes filled with tears, but I was done being moved by her performances. Ed, please, can't we at least try? Try what? Try to pretend the last 3 months didn't happen? Try to go back to being roommates who don't talk to each other? Try to rebuild a marriage while you're in love with someone else? I never said I was in love with him. You didn't have to. It's written all over your face every time you say his name. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her carefully applied mascara. So that's it? 18 years of marriage and you're just going to throw it all away? I'm not throwing anything away, Olivia. You already did that. I walked past her toward the front door, but she grabbed my arm. Where are you going? Somewhere I can think without listening to you justify sleeping with my former business partner. Ed, please, don't leave like this. We can work through this if we both try. Can we? Can we work through the fact that you've been lying to me for months? Can we work through the fact that you humiliated me in front of the entire neighborhood? Can we work through the fact that you're sitting in our kitchen defending the man you've been cheating with? I'm not defending him. Yes, you are. You're making excuses for him, explaining his problems, talking about him like he's the wounded party in all this. Olivia let go of my arm, her face crumpling. I don't know how to fix this. That's the first honest thing you've said all day. I left her standing in our kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of her carefully planned reconciliation meeting. The legal pad full of talking points lay forgotten on the table, rendered useless by the conversation we'd actually had instead of the one she'd scripted. But as I drove away from the house I'd called home for 20 years, I realized something that surprised me. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt relieved. The truth was finally out in the open, and now I could decide what to do with it.